Hello there. You're listening to the Box Office Show. I'm Dylan Johnson, and there is no Ryan Hill as he's just opened up a Hawaiian-themed picklefish restaurant that he runs with the drummer from Scott Pilgrim vs. the World. It's called Big Chill by Ryan Hill, killer dill krill that thrills, no gills, just grilled till it's still, made by Allison Pill who never spills dill until you refuse the bill at the till, then a shrill pill will spill krill dill till nil. As always, I'm going to be talking about the box office numbers from last weekend and our box office predictions for this upcoming weekend. And then I will be talking about two of the biggest movies of the weekend for me. Lilo and Stitch, the remake, which is blowing box office numbers. We will get to that. And the wide release of Tim Robinson's Friendship. Let's start with some news. The Cannes Film Festival has wrapped up, and we have some winners to announce. The Palme d'Or, the big prize of the Cannes Film Festival, the number one film, the big winner, went to A Simple Accident, an Iranian film. It is Neon, the distributing company Neon's sixth consecutive Palme d'Or, which is crazy. They've won the Palme d'Or ever since Parasite in 2019. They've won every single one since then. The Grand Prix, which is sort of like a pseudo runner-up. It's kind of its own separate thing. It's not really like it's like its own kind of. It's kind of like a runner-up. Went to Sentimental Value by Joachim Trier, which is my most anticipated movie from Cannes. It was on my top 10 most anticipated movies of the year, and I've heard a lot of buzz from people who really wanted it to win the Palme d'Or, even though it didn't. Although for Neon, it wouldn't matter because Neon also acquired Sentimental Value, so regardless, looks like they were going to win. Other awards, the Joint Jury Prize, which is sort of just awards given out by the jury, went to two films this year, Sirat and Sound of Falling, both of which I mentioned and talked about in the previous episode. Best Director went to Leber Medonki. I'm going to butcher this. I already butchered it. Leber Medonka Filho for The Secret Agent, which is the Brazilian film with Wagner Moura. Best Actress went to Nadia Meliti in La Petite Dernière, and Best Actor went to Wagner Moura in The Secret Agent, which is awesome because Wagner Moura is supposed to be getting a lot of praise for his performance, and it could be an awards contender big time. And the only other news I have is a little update for the box office draft. It seems like the Michael Jackson biopic, unfortunately, is going to get pushed back to next year and may even be split up into two movies because they are undergoing massive reshoots right now. There are all kinds of legal contentions going on, and it seems like it's very likely that it's going to be pushed back. So officially, I am replacing Michael in my roster with Fantastic Four. I think that is going to make massive waves. I think they are pushing it very heavily. I see the advertising for it everywhere. I think people really want a really good Fantastic Four adaptation since the other ones have been a little lackluster in the past. And I think with the post-credit scene to Thunderbolts and how excited people seem to be for Fantastic Four, even though it will be front-loaded like every other superhero movie is, I think it will do big numbers, and I think Fantastic Four will be one of the movies ending up on our top 10 for the year. And since we're always gunning for those top 10 numbers, I am going to be selecting Fantastic Four. Now let's go ahead and do our box office breakdown for May 23rd to the 25th. Coming in first place, no surprise to anybody, Lilo and Stitch made a whopping $146 million in the 3-day weekend and $182 million in the full Memorial Day 4-day weekend. That is insanely big numbers. It is certainly on track to cross over $1 billion. That is a movie that is on Ryan's box office draft. This is its premiere weekend. That is huge for that movie. Very, very impressive. Following in second with Mission Impossible, The Final Reckoning, the fifth pick on my roster, made $64 million in the 3-day and $79 million in the 4-day. Also, big numbers for Mission Impossible. And it is on track to make upwards of $500 million. It did gangbusters worldwide in its opening release, and I'm hoping it goes all the way. It's my last pick on my roster. I need to do at least 500 to really be a well-rounded roster. I'm hoping it can cross 6. we'll see when it gets. We'll see where it ends up in a couple weeks. In third, Final Destination Bloodlines made 19.3 million in the 3-day and 24 million in the 4-day, followed by Thunderbolts with 9.7 million in the 3-day and 12.2 million in the 4-day. In fifth, Sinners with 8.6 million in the 3-day and 10.9 million in the 4-day. Then The Last Rodeo with 5.4 million in the 3-day and 6.9 million in the 4-day. Friendship, another movie I'm talking about this weekend, in its wide release, made 4.6 million in the 3-day and 5.6 million in the 4-day. Once again, has a very high theater average. Not even though it's a wide release, it doesn't have as many theaters as a lot of these other movies, and so its theater average, its average dollar per theater, is quite high, and that's very impressive for a smaller movie like this. A Minecraft movie follows it with 2.2 million in the 3-day and 2.9 million in the 4-day. Once again, it seems like it's going to come up just shy of a billion, which is very sad. However, it's coming to a close on our box office breakdown, and it's gonna fall off, I believe, and so pretty soon. And so I just want to say, for Minecraft movie, you did indeed do exactly what I need you to do. I thought you had $1 billion potential, which it was a risky move to make because I could have also seen you flopping, but you did it. You made damn near close to a billion, and even though you didn't quite cross the threshold, I'm very proud of you. You are a very good third pick, and I hope Zootopia 2 being my first pick crosses 1.5 billion, and now Fantastic Four being my new second pick can also cross a billion to bring me up to 3 billion, over 3 billion with just my first three movies. That is the only possible way I could possibly duel against Ryan's Avatar 3 and Jurassic World. I'm hoping that I can knock them down. Lilo and Stitch also looks like it's going to make a billion. It's going to be tough. I'm hoping Superman tanks. If it does, I have potential, and I'm hoping that other summer blockbusters might detract from the Jurassic World box office. Those are my only hopes. We will see. After Minecraft movie, The Accountant 2 made 2 million in its 3-day and 2.7 million in its 4-day, and rounding out the top 10, Hurry Up Tomorrow, The Weeknd's movie, made 688,000 in the 3-day and 845,000 in the 4-day. Could even crack a million in what is one of, if not the most eventful Memorial Day weekends. Box office predictions for the upcoming weekend, which is the weekend of May 30th to June 1st. We have Karate Kid Legends coming out, which, with a renewed interest in the Karate Kid franchise because of Cobra Kai and the return of Jackie Chan from the 2000-ish remake that they made with Jane Smith, I think this has potential to do pretty good numbers. I'm going to say somewhere between 20 and 30 million, which might be a little bit lower than it needs to quite, necessarily make back its money. But you know what? I think that's still pretty solid for a Karate Kid film. So we'll see. I don't remember what the original Karate Kid made or the remake Karate Kid, but I think I'm leaning towards between 20 and 30 million. And then the other movie coming out this weekend is Bring Her Back, a horror movie by the Philippou brothers, who made Talk to Me. Talk to Me. Talk to Me. Yeah, right? Talk to Me. The movie about the hand. Does it talk to me? I'm going to look it up. It's Talk to Me, right? It's Talk to Me. They talked to me a couple years ago, and now they're coming back with a new horror film, Bring Her Back. I think there's just so much going on. Usually I'm in favor of horror movies doing better than usual, especially around now when like there are not a lot of horror options. But I think Final Destination Bloodlines is kind of raking in the money. Sinners is technically horror related and horror adjacent. I think that's also kind of filling people's appetite. And Bring Her Back is not like an established franchise and have like a lot of established names to it. They do have fans. People did really like Talk to Me, had very good reviews, and I'm sure Bring Her Back will also be a very good film. But I don't think it's going to do as high as I usually predict for horror movies around this time of year. I'm gonna go with less than 10 million, unfortunately. But I mean, given the budget, it was probably a very low budget film. I'm not sure. I didn't look it up. Could be worse, but I'm thinking less than 10 million, which it could have done better as well. All right, now it's time to talk about our main topic for this episode. I would have really loved to do an episode on Mission Impossible, the new one, because I did watch it. I know Ryan has seen it, but unfortunately Ryan is unavailable at the moment, and I refuse to do this without him and Kirk present. They should both be here. And so, with that in mind, I'm sure later down the line, when Ryan returns and Kirk is available, we will do a Mission Impossible, The Final Reckoning episode where we can finally talk about everything that we thought about it as a way to kind of close out our Mission Impossible series here on the show. So in that fashion, in that passion of ignore Mission Impossible in this episode, I'm going to instead talk about the other movies that came out this weekend: Lilo and Stitch, which I was fortunate to see, and Friendship, which went wide this weekend. It released the weekend before, but it has now gone wide, and I was able to see it now. And I think the films that have similarities in terms of characters that are quite funny to the audience, but very upsetting and aggravating to the characters around them. A very similar vibe in that way, but ultimately two vastly different enjoyment levels from my end. I'm gonna go ahead and start with Lilo and Stitch because I have more to say about this one. I've seen it more recently, and my initial impressions are, oof, uh, God, it had potential to be good, and it really wasn't. It falls to the classic blunder of any remake that you're going to do, any live action remake or any remake in general, which is that they're not building upon anything that's pre-existing. The things that they keep the same are just simply the same, and there's nothing developed about them. And the things that they have changed are changed at the detriment of the film. Obviously, there's no Captain Gantu, which I think is a big mistake. So Jumba, Dr. Jumba, has to take the role of the antagonist, which I think is also a mistake because even though he is antagonistic over the course of the original movie and the show, he's certainly not an antagonist in general. He's very much on the side of Stitch and wants his experiments to do good. And there's more related to Jumba in this remake version that I will get into when we get there. But in terms of just initial impressions, I don't think the humor really landed. I don't really think the story landed. I think the editing was a bit of a mess, and I was not a fan of pretty much all of it. And now that I've said that, I can say the things that I did like, which I thought the casting for the human characters was done very, very well. I think the woman they cast for Nani did a very good job kind of leading the film. I think the little girl they picked for Lilo, I think she is very talented and very fun at times. And it seems like she had like a good time while making the movie. And I think she and the chemistry she has with the little CGI Stitch is well done, which is impressive to do because it's hard to get an actress to act with, what is essentially like a stuffed animal. Maybe it's not, little kids love stuffed animals, but it's hard to get them to get what you want out of a scene when they don't even really have a scene partner. They're acting with a little CGI character. And I think the filmmakers pulled it off really well. And of course, Stitch is Stitch. And a lot of his fundamental characteristics weren't really changed, which is a very good idea, very good choice. They kept him very, very, similar to the original character. This Stitch is pretty much the same Stitch, and that is the biggest pro of the film is that Stitch is still there and Stitch is still entertaining. Now I can get into spoilers. The opening scene, of course, is Stitch getting banished and then breaking out instead of being banished. And I gotta say, as soon as Jumbo opens his mouth and it's Zach Galifianakis talking without doing any kind of voice, just doing his normal voice, I knew it was gonna be. I knew it was cooked. I knew this was gonna be bad. And I think most of the casting is pretty good in the movie. Uh, Zach Galifianakis was miscast. I love Zach Galifianakis. I think he's a great actor. I think he's very entertaining. He's very funny. This is not the role for him. It just in no way feels like Jumba. It does not do it differently in a good way. It does it differently in a very, very bad way. And I think that's very unfortunate. And I think like the woman who plays Nani, I think was cast well, and I think obviously they've changed a lot about her character, which people are upset about, and I myself am not the biggest fan. With her kind of disdain towards family, but like I think I understand what they were trying to go for. This kind of weathered Nani who is very, very beaten down, having to take care of Lilo and being in over her head now that her parents have passed, and kind of building upon that sort of foundation of Lilo and Nani having this relationship and having it kind of break down over the fact that Lilo is just too young and doesn't understand everything that Nani is doing, and that Nani is just trying to keep up with bills and errands and everything, and kind of giving up her life. And I understand the uh, kind of pessimism that this version of Nani has. I get it; it's more real. It's, it is what is changed from the animated film is that, she is more of a pessimist because this is real life and because those things are more present. Of course, there is still, the child services people in the original film, that is very much like a present, storyline that's going on, but it's very much more pushed down upon, and Nani's definitely put more in the front of the film than the original, which I don't think is like a bad choice, and it was a different way to go. But I think with there already being so many things misfiring in the film, which I'll get to, I think fundamentally changing that part of Nani hurt a lot of people because they looked up to Nani quite a bit for being so resilient. And obviously, the change that she goes through in the film is that she ends up being that version of Nani from the original one by embracing Stitch as like a member of the family, and so it's more so Nani going through changes than Lilo going through changes. Nani's much more of a dynamic character in that sense. And for a movie that's called Lilo and Stitch, it's to me more focused on Nani as a character and her relationship with Lilo. So I understand what they're trying to do. I think it should have been more focused on Lilo kind of embracing herself, like the original is. And they do touch upon, they have a lot of similar, plot points. The girls who pick on Lilo and the fact that she's kind of an outcast and things like that. And that she finds her home in Stitch, in her Ohana. Uh, Overall, not a fan of Zach Galifianakis. So for an opening, it was very jarring. Really, really threw a wrench into what was already going to be an unpleasant experience going into it, because I knew it. I just don't like these kinds of films. I've never really enjoyed a live action remake because I think they remake the wrong ones. When there's, Road to El Dorado, they could have remade, or Atlantis, which they should remake a live action. There are options there, and they aren't taking them, and they're choosing the more popular movies because they know they'll make more money. Like, I think a live action Atlantis certainly would not make nearly as much money as Lilo and Stitch is going to make, obviously. So they're going the way of the money, as they always do. But I think the live action Atlantis would make a better movie than the live action Lilo and Stitch, depending on who makes it, I guess. You can always fuck up anything. And I think there was a version of the live action Lilo and Stitch that could have worked. Just like I feel that way about most of these movies. I don't feel that way about Lion King so much. It's just entirely animated. There's no actual human beings. There's one shot in it that isn't CGI, and it's the opening shot. I don't understand. It's essentially just a like real looking version of the original movie that they just changed everything. It's just, I don't understand the purpose of that, because it's not really live action. It's just a fake kind of thing. But most of these movies, I'm like, they have a potential to be good, and they just never really are because they don't really change. They change the things they shouldn't change, and they don't develop anything that the audience would want to see developed, or that could be developed in an interesting way. And this is just another example of that. But on in other regards, in the opening, Billy Magnuson is present. He's playing Bleakley, and he is very good, very well cast. I think he's great. He is holding his own. He is playing Bleakley in a way that he should be. He's really dedicated to that original version of the character, and I appreciate his uh, attention to detail and determination to be the best Bleakley that he can be, which we'll get to, expand more upon it later in the discussion. But I think Billy Madison does a fantastic job. And the only other remark about the opening scene is I already not a fan of the humor, which is fine. It's, for kids, they're appealing to kids, but I just don't think they know what makes kids laugh. And that kind of humor, I think, goes over better in animated products, and it just doesn't land well when it's live action. It's just different kinds of humor. You can't just translate animated humor into live action humor and make it really work well. It's difficult. It's a very difficult thing to do. You can do it, but it's very, very difficult. And so the humor, not very great. And the editing, already off to a bad start. It is hard to tell what's going on. I'll be honest, I had not a great theater experience. I was in the very front row, the nosebleeds, and so I was looking pretty much straight up at the thing. and it was hard to follow as a result of that. But I'm pretty confident that had I been sitting in the best seat in the house, I still would have had trouble following because it's just kind of all over the place. It is so fast, it's cutting so quick, and it's cutting in a way that I can't follow the characters. My eyes are jumping all over the screen, and I just can't tell what's going on. And so editing in the like more action sequences is kind of throwing me for a loop here. Uh, The only other thing that came out of the opening sequence was I thought that the CGI did not look too bad. I think they narrowly avoided the uncanny valley, which would have been easy to do. It would have been an easy target to hit considering the looks of some of these characters, and I think they avoided it. And I think that just goes to show the attention to detail that the CGI artists have and the skill that is developing as CGI gets better and better. I think the CGI artists should be praised because I think it came out pretty good. I think the interaction between the live action characters and the CGI characters also came out pretty good. Now, I've talked about Lilo a bit and the actress playing her. I've talked about Nani a little bit and the actress playing her. So we do like a lot of like of the background on them two characters for a bit and learn more about them. And it's pretty much very, 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 very similar to the original uh, film. And then Stitch lands and he's arrived to Hawaii and he goes berserk trying to find cake at a wedding. And oh my god, the editing is way worse than it was in the opening sequence. I can't even tell what's happening. It is all over the fucking place. The cameras are positioned with very little, intention. It is bouncing around. It is impossible to understand what's happening. It is not entertaining, and I just want it to end. Make it stop. And then it does. He gets, run over by a car or something and taken to the animal shelter. Very similar to the original film, and Lilo gets to go and meet Stitch, and Stitch obviously, copies the dogs, brings in his fourth and fifth arms, or his third and yeah, God, his fifth and sixth arms, and his little spiky things and his little ear things. And he just looks like a dog-ish creature once again, and so Lilo adopts him. And you know what? Their chemistry is still there. It's still there from the original. I think they're still just as good. Stitch is pretty much the same, and I give props to the girl playing Lilo. She is doing a very good job of emulating, uh, not only just emulating, the chemistry that existed in the original film, but kind of doing her own thing and trying to just have fun with it and be there with Stitch and just enjoy kind of the filming of the scenes, which is really what makes it work for me. Is it doesn't feel like she's in her head or people are like bogging down her. It's very easily as like a little kid like that with all these cameras and people around and all this money depending upon you playing this character to kind of get overwhelmed. And I don't feel like she was ever overwhelmed in the process. It seemed like she was just having a good time, which is what it needed to be. She needed to be relaxed and just enjoying it. And I'm glad that she was able to do that and have fun. And I think she stick the landing. I think it was a good portrayal, and I had a good time with the two of them together and the little montage the few montages they go through. I think they're fun. Meanwhile, Pleakley and Jumba are running around trying to find Stitch, as always, and they decide to go into costume. And in the original movie, they just put on human clothes and they just look like aliens with human clothes, which is kind of what's funny about it. And nobody really realizes that they're not humans. But I I guess I go back and forth. I didn't like it at first, but honestly, thinking about it more, it is funny in the cartoon. But if they were to just be the CGI aliens wearing human clothes, it would be wildly unbelievable that people wouldn't realize that they were aliens. And I think they were trying to go for a more realistic take and not just be kind of like a goofy comedy. I think they were trying to be more serious about it. And so I understand why they went the route they did, which is that the actors take over like visual hallucinations of human beings to look like humans, and they just basically take over Billy Magnuson and Zach Galifianakis. So the actors get to be themselves. They get to be live action. They get to be in the scene. They get to do it. And once again, Zach Galifianakis is just not right for the role. Very unfortunate. Even in live action, just doesn't work for me. Doesn't feel like Jumba. Doesn't feel like I'm looking at Jumba. Doesn't feel like I'm like Doesn't feel like a scientist in any way. You know, in the original one, he's for sure like a mad scientist who has developed these alien creatures, these experiments, and he's trying to hunt it down. And in this one, he doesn't feel like that. He just feels like an asshole. He just feels like a total dick. And that's not entertaining. That sucks. I don't want to be watching a dick run around in this movie. I want to watch like a very complex, dynamic character. But he had to take on the role of Gantu as well and be the antagonist of the movie because, God forbid, you know, God forbid Jumba just be himself and that there is an actual Gantu in the show. That would have been great, but oh well. Bleakly though, Billy Magnuson in live action, very good. He's emulating the like weird mannerisms that Pleakley as a cartoon and as a CGI character kind of portrays, and he's doing it very well. He has a very weird smile, and he's walking funny. Great physicality to him. Very good performance. If you ask me, I think well cast, well performed. Could not have wanted more from a live action Pleakley, I suppose. They're chasing around Stitch and Lilo. I don't really think they have very good character dynamics with each other. Unfortunately, their chemistry is great, and I don't think the humor is landing as well with the kind of bickering and bantering that they have. I just don't really. Once again, I just don't care. I just don't care as much. Theirs aren't as good as the originals, and it's just not as much fun, unfortunately. But poor Nani, bro. They really Stitch and Lilo really fuck her shit up, dude. It's been a while since I've seen the original. I can't attest to it. I don't know how much they fuck her shit up in the original, but they really fuck her shit up in this remake. They get her fired. They prevent her from getting another job, and they basically put Nani in a situation where she is like unable to care for Lilo anymore, and she's like at her wits end. But then they get her this job. They get her this new surfing job where she can go and just teach surfing, which is something that she was very good at, and she can do what she loves, which is nice. It's very cool. And we get the surfing scene, which is also featured in the original, and it is the best scene in the movie. It is the best scene in the original movie, best scene in this movie. Still incredibly heartfelt. It's really great. I love seeing like the music and seeing the family all surfing together is so nice. Seeing Stitch want to actually go out and be on the water and surf with them is just so cute and so wonderful. And I find it like very heartwarming and thoroughly entertaining, like the whole scene start to finish. And then it's ruined by Zach Galifianakis at the end, who just comes in and just like ends it all. And I understand that they needed to continue the story and get the plot points moving, but God, I just was having such a good time. I wish they could have just like kept the plot out of it for a second and just had a good time with the characters so they could get developed a little bit. But no, they had to keep the plot going. And so Zach Galifianakis shoots the board, and they all fall in the water. And Stitch almost drowns Lilo because he can't swim, and he's really freaking out, and he almost drowns Lilo. And it gets to a point where Nani just cannot care for Lilo anymore, and she has to give her up. Which is heartbreaking. The idea that she's giving up Lilo and like giving in, like she just can't do it. And it's very it feels very real. It's hard to look after another person when you're so young, and I feel for Nani the character, and I think people are being too harsh upon her character in this version because I don't think anything is unrealistic. It just not is not similar to the original Nani, and you have to understand that they went a different direction, but the direction they went in, they carried it out well. I think it just is different than the original Nani, and in the end of this movie, she is that way, and she's optimistic again at the end of it as a result of the movie, and I think it's fine to make that change. I am okay with it personally. I think it's fine because Lilo is very passionately in favor of family instead of Nani. She's saying Ohana means family. She's committed to Stitch staying in the family, and I like that. I think that's nice. Uh, Other notes. Once again, Jumba just sucks. Very different character. Not enjoying it. Courtney B. Vance as Cobra Bubbles. Perfect. Great casting. The only person that would have been better would have been Ving Rhames when Ving Rhames was a lot younger, because Ving Rhames played the original Go Rebel, I believe, and a young version of Ving Rhames would have also been great, like Pulp Fiction, like mid 90s era Ving Rhames would have been fantastic as well for Cobra Bubbles. But Courtney B. Vance for a modern day version of Cobra Bubbles, fantastic. I love Courtney B. Vance. I don't really understand his role in the movie though. I don't feel like Cobra Bubbles really impacts the story. I mean, he has a plot point towards the end where he tries to arrest the aliens and then helps them, for a reason undisclosed, character development that we aren't aware of happening. And he just isn't like much of a major character in this. And he wasn't really that big of a character in the original either. There's had to be like a military presence of some kind because there's aliens, of course. And I just feel like if you had to choose between including Courtney B. Vance's Cobra Bubbles or including Captain Gantu, I feel like Gantu is a more important character. He's like the antagonist. He's what we want to see, and he's not there. So I find that very upsetting. But Cobra Bubbles still entertaining. Just not really sure what he's doing here, for the most part. Great performance though. Courtney B. Vance killing it. Once again, no Captain Gantu. Still upset about it. He is the antagonist, and you cut out the whole antagonist, and you couldn't make the movie without an antagonist. So you had to relegate that role to Jumbo, who was not really that much of an. He was just an antagonizing force in the original movie, and not much of an antagonist, which is upsetting to say the least. And we get to the ending spaceship, chase where Jumbo is going to. He's already destroyed their childhood home. Was threatening to destroy their parents' like undisturbed bedroom, which is horrendous and rude, and has now kidnapped Stitch to take him away, and he's going to turn him into 627, which is the crazy 627 reference, the crazy fucking Stitch that comes after him from the television show, and also cool reference to 625, who is my favorite of the experiments because I watched the show when I was a kid. He's the one who just sits there and makes sandwiches all the time, and he's like Captain Gantu's like steward or something. I love that little guy. He's just sitting there making sandwiches. He's just so chill. But then Lilo has to come, and she's snuck up onto the ship, and she is, about to sabotage the whole thing and take the whole thing down, and Jumbo gets sucked out and almost drowns. And it's just, I don't know. Why? Why does Jumbo have to be the bad guy? Why? It just doesn't make any sense. He's just a dick the whole fucking time. I think it's the worst change they made was making Jumbo the antagonist. It's just so stupid. He's supposed to just be like him and Pleakley are supposed to just have good chemistry and they're side characters who are trying to find Stitch. It has nothing to do with antagonism. It's just out of, preservation of his experiment. And it feels like he's like trying to antagonize the characters mostly, which is like, why? Gantu is the one who's supposed to be the antagonist. It drives me nuts. But anyway, it ends with Stitch falling into the water, and he gives himself up so that Lilo can live, and he's going to drown. And then Lilo insists that Nani go back and save Stitch. Please, 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 please. And they did reference that Nani has, trained of doing this thing where, running underwater with the heavy ball, you know. And so she's able to pick up Stitch, and she runs the distance. And I think it's a cool scene. I think they set it up very well. I think it's a cool idea. Not possible. Holy fuck, it's not possible. They were so, so, so far out there. They were like 200-300 feet out there. It would have been difficult to swim that far, let alone run underwater that distance with weight. No, she would have drowned. Not possible. Cool idea though. I wish they had made it seem more realistic. Maybe put them a little closer to shore. It doesn't really matter. It's movie magic. Who cares that much? I'm being nitpicky, but not possible. Still a cool idea. And of course, it ends almost identically to the original movie. Stitch has the same speech almost, and it's just still a good speech. You know, this is my family. It's broken, but it's mine. I found it all on my own. It's still good. Still hits. Overall, it's still entertaining at times. It's still very similar to the original. It has like moments that are fun. Lilo and Stitch have good chemistry. Nani is more present and has, I think, a more definitive character arc, which kind of depletes Lilo's presence a little bit, in my opinion. And it's more about their relationship than her and Stitch's relationship, which I think is negative for the film. And of course, the CGI is good, but the editing is very, very bad. And Zach Galifianakis is killing me in this movie. Even though I love him, he's just killing me in this movie. God. it's not his fault. They just cast wrong, bad casting. But Billy Magnuson, very good casting, very strong. Cobra Bubbles, Courtney B. Vance, very very good. Just wish he had more of a reason to be there, I guess. But still, a very good performance. And I had fun at times, but was bored most of it, and confused for a good chunk of the action sequences, unfortunately. So, how many Jumbas stuck in a portal out of five am I going to give this movie? I'm going to give it 2.5. Maybe two? I think I'm going to go with 2.5. It is just pretty much taking the original movie, changing a couple things, and making it slightly worse. With not much built upon it, other than Nani being more present, I suppose. But, you know, Cobra Bubbles has less of a reason to be there. Jumba's character is completely destroyed. Bleakly, coming out surprisingly good, still. And Stitch also coming out still pretty good. They didn't change much of Stitch's character, and that was a very strong idea. And Lilo also being a very good character. I just wish, she and Stitch's relationship was more built up, I suppose. It's just the whole focus. It's the name of the movie. It's the whole point of the movie. It's like the main focus of the original movie. I think Nani getting more screen time isn't a bad thing, but the bad thing about it is that it detracts from the relationship between Stitch and Lilo for focusing a lot on Lilo and Nani. But you know what? Different interpretations. That's the whole point of the remake, is to do something new and see if it works. And I respect the attempt. And I think Nani's character and her character arc that she goes on is not written poorly. I think it's fine. I think it's satisfactory. I think it does the job. And I just think people don't like it because it's not the original Nani. And you know what? It's not. But it's something new. They gave it a shot. Maybe it worked, maybe it didn't. 2.5. 2.5 out of 5. And the other movie that came out wide this weekend that I got to see was Friendship, which is a film by Andrew DeYoung, starring Tim Robinson and Paul Rudd and Kate Mara. And obviously, Tim Robinson is very well known for I Think You Should Leave on Netflix, the sketch comedy show. And he has a very, very particular brand of humor, which is based on like very strong amounts of absurdity and really leaning into the bit and kind of hammering in on very odd specific details, and kind of just being loud and aggressive and absurd. And it is a style of comedy I've come to like over the years. I didn't like it when I first tried to watch I Think You Should Leave. I didn't think it was that funny, but as time has gone on and my humor has changed, I think it is funnier and funnier the more I watch it. And so I was very much looking forward to this movie because I've become a big Tim Robinson fan over the years as I've watched more and more of his things. And this movie is written and directed by Andrew DeYoung, who's a friend of Tim Robinson's for a long time. And it is entirely dependent upon Tim Robinson being there. Nobody else cast in this role could play this role because it was a role that was specifically written and designed for him. And it is essentially, I hesitate to say that it is a just 2 hour I Think You Should Leave sketch, because it does have like merit outside of just being like a silly little thing. I would rather say that it is quite literally like a drama film, and all the other characters are existing in this dramatic film, and Tim Robinson is just there, and he is playing like the most absurd version of like his like kind of character, and it is ripe with comedy. It is the hardest I've laughed in a theater in so long. I had a packed theater with me. We were all laughing. It was a fantastic experience, and it has such great moments. Tim Robinson is a comedy legend. He has great line deliveries the entire time of this movie, and it is just entirely dependent on him to make it great. Paul Rudd, his co-star, the second lead of the film, is a great straight man, like working opposite of Tim Robinson. I think he carries a lot of that weight comedy wise, and I think he's doing a really really good job. And he does get a couple of like silly little moments for himself as well as the movie goes on, where he can kind of do something a little cartoonish, and Tim Robinson can like take a bit of a break, and I think that's great. And Tim Robinson turns into the straight man, which is kind of funny. But I'm just gonna, instead of like, I will be going through the movie kind of beat by beat, like we usually do on the show. But I'm mostly just gonna be focusing on the bits that I think were funny, because really, the merit of the film is just how great of a comedy it is. Like, it is it's shot really well. It's technically, well made, and all these things. But really, it is a comedy through and through, and you just don't get those often enough these days. So I'm just kind of run through the things that I found so funny about the film. So right off the bat, the opening scene, Kate Mara is in a cancer survivor group and is giving a very long monologue about how terrifying it was to have cancer and what living with it was like. And she's talking about how she's afraid that it's going to come back. And the whole time, Tim Robinson is in the background of the shot, coming more and more into focus, very, very intently watching her. And he cuts her off and chimes in and goes, "It's not coming back." Great. Already sets the tone of the movie immediately. It's a fantastic choice. It is setting the tone that Tim Robinson is the outside character here. Everybody else is living in reality. Tim Robinson is Tim Robinson. Or perhaps everybody else is living in a surreality where everything is dramatic or melodramatic and over the top, and it's like a movie world. And Tim Robbins is the only real person here who's just like a weird guy that you might actually encounter in the real world. But another funny moment in that scene that I think is great is when Kate Mara is talking about her ex and that she's been hanging out with her ex, and Tim Robbins is like, "Who? Who is that guy? Your ex?" And she's like, "Yeah, the firefighter." And he goes, "You didn't tell me that." And she's like, "Yeah, I did." And you're like, "No, you didn't." It's great. It's fantastic. Uh, the next good bit, which I saw before seeing the movie, I saw it in like a trailer or something, but when their son comes in and brings nachos to Kate Mara, and then they kiss on the lips like goodbye, and Tim Robinson just like, "You guys kiss on the lips?" His just like his awareness of how weird things are, and like his willingness to talk about it and point things out, and they ignore the way the other characters just ignore him constantly. He is kind of like commentating so much on everything happening in the movie. And I think it's fantastic. I love the scene where after he meets Paul Rudd, they're out in the woods, and Paul Rudd is showing him all the mushrooms that are around, how he can cook them and forage them, and he's slowly sinking in the mud, and he pulls them out. I love when he drops. He's like having like an emotional moment. When he drops his phone, he goes, "Ah, fuck my phone," and he just freaks out. It's things like that that I think are just really, really funny. Where the movie's about to be like serious and take itself seriously and really get into things, and then something happens, and Tim Robinson is just so hyper focused on the thing that fucked up, and he's just so aggressive and angry about it. Everybody else is just trying to like take things seriously, and he just can't do it. So committed to the bit. It's fantastic. The obviously the big scene of the movie, the first half of the movie, is when Tim Robinson gets to meet Paul Rudd's friends, and they're all hanging out, and he's like very, very nervous. He's telling himself that he's a prince outside. He's smoking cigarettes. He's trying to be cool, trying to fit in. He watches them all sing and like have a good time, and he's like, "Wow, this is my life now." Like he's like, "This is great. I'm going to like be a member of this friend group. It's gonna be awesome." And they go to do like boxing in the gym because they're like guys, guys doing guy shit, and they're boxing. And Paul Rudd like smacks Tim Robinson in the face twice in a row and almost knocks him down. And so Tim Robinson swings at him when he's not ready, which you shouldn't do. Like, it's such a rude thing to do, and really hammers down on his head. And is like, it is like what is easily the hardest scene to watch in the movie is like the way that he is like carrying himself about in the scene, because everybody else is just so like, you can feel everybody else cringing at him at the things that he's doing, and they're like upset at him. You can tell, you can feel that like tenseness between them, and then the choice he makes is insane. So when I heard the plot of this film, I was under the impression that obviously it is Tim Robinson, and he becomes friends with Paul Rudd, and then Paul Rudd decides he doesn't want to be friends. And I thought the idea was going to be that Tim Robinson didn't like make a mistake, that for whatever reason Paul Rudd just decided not to be friends, and Tim Robinson is upset naturally because nothing went wrong. He didn't do anything bad, and he's just now can't be friends with this guy. It was going to be like his commentary on the weird dynamic of male friendships, how they come and go, and how like they don't really talk about things. I thought that was going to be like the idea of the film. So I didn't think Tim Robinson was going to do anything to get him kicked out of the friend group. So when he punches Paul Rudd in the head, I was like, oh, he's doing like really cringy stuff, but like, like he could recover from this. But like, I guess they are giving him a reason to be kicked out. Like it does make a little more sense now. Like I understand why they're going to kick him out in the next part of the movie. And then he says he's been a bad boy, and he starts doing a little kid voice, and then he takes the bar of soap and he says, "I know what happens to bad boys." He sticks the entire bar of soap in his mouth and like sucks on it in front of all of them and like makes a pouty face. And they're all just watching so like dumbstruck with what the fuck is happening. And I was like, oh my god, it was cracking me up in the theaters because it's a great performance, but it's so hard to watch because obviously they don't want to hang out anymore. Up until this point, like Tim Robbins has been like a weird dude who's very oblivious to the things around him, but he hasn't been like a freak really, like an absolute freak. And this scene happens, and you are like, oh, he's a fucking freak. He doesn't have friends because his true self is so outwardly bizarre when you really get to know him that you don't want to be his friend. And I think that's the gem of the movie is that we are going through the process of like understanding why like you wouldn't want to be friends with Tim Robinson as his character as is going on because you get to know him and you're like, hey, he's a little awkward, he's a little weird, but and he has like infatuations with things and attention problems, but like he's trying, he just wants to be friends and it's fine. And then he gets weirder and weirder, and you're like, oh, now that I, as the audience member, getting to know him and this character a little bit better, I I wouldn't want to be fucking friends with him either. He's bizarre. He's getting worse and worse as the movie goes on. Very quickly after the garage scene, he realizing that he is not going to be friends with Paul Rudd anymore. Paul Rudd like officially cuts things off. He just starts acting like Paul Rudd, like trying to become him more. He like cooks the foraged mushrooms and he takes up hobbies and he starts drumming and he's like trying to be cool all of a sudden. And very briefly in the movie, it works. And I think that's really, really funny. That like the idea that emulating your friends is part of your personality. Like you are made up of all the people you've ever met, kind of thing. And he's like emulating Paul Rudd so much because real male friendship is like real friendship in general is like that. I do that myself. I emulate a lot of like what my friends do because I admire them as people and I want to be more like them. It's just a real thing that people do. And he's doing it like obsessively to a strange amount, like just word for word rote copying everything that he's learned as opposed to just taking the ideas of Paul Rudd's character. He's just doing everything that Paul Rudd's character did and just trying to live exactly like him, which is really, really fucking funny. Uh, and very quickly that kind of turns on his head because he takes the mushrooms with his son and they go to the mall and he just vomits into his own cup because the mushrooms made him sick because he's fucking stupid. Every little scene in here is like a little I think you should leave sketch, kind of like stitched together with one really good solid plot running through it. And I think that is what gives it such comedy gold is that they can just make you laugh in the moment and move on and do a new laugh. It's not about sustained bits, it's just hitting you with new stuff constantly. And they're always gems, which I think is really, really strong, like a very good strong point about it. And he hangs out with his coworkers. And it's just really awkward. He's trying to like be cool like Paul Rudd and make them want to be friends with him because he want to be friends with Paul Rudd and they don't want to be friends with him because he's a fucking weirdo. And it's like coming off like that, and he just gets pissed off and kicks him out, and then they all hang out at work without him. And he's just watching them from the window like Squidward. Oh my god, so funny. And then this whole middle section was kind of losing me a little bit, and then we get to a point where it starts to pick up again, which is where he goes back into the sewers where Paul Rudd took him with Kate Mara, and he loses her. He loses her in the sewers, and it's like for a brief moment, it feels kind of horror-ish. Like he's running through these dark sewers, and the music is kind of intense, and he can't find his wife, and he's screaming, and he's worried that she's dead. And then it just immediately cuts back to the house, and he kind of walks in, and she's not there, and you're like, where is she? He's like kind of acting very, very odd. And then eventually the police show up, and just one of my favorite lines of the movie is where they ask her where she is, and he just very, very flatly goes, she's in the sewers. And they're like, what? And he's like, she's in the sewers. They have to go and find her, and they get arrested. Paul Rudd and Tim Robinson get arrested because he just snitches on Paul Rudd. And then they get into a fight in the jail, and Paul Rudd falls over, and it turns out he's bald, and he freaks out because his fucking toupee falls off, and he freaks out. And this is like a really good fun moment for Paul Rudd to just kind of be a little bit more eccentric. And Tim Robbins is like, oh, and now all of a sudden Tim Robbins, who's been bizarre for like a good hour, gets to kind of be like the straight guy to Paul Rudd being like a little weirdo who's like very self conscious about his baldness and like freaks out a little bit. So this is a nice little bit for Tim Robinson to do. And immediately after getting released from prison, he has to go pitch to the mayor the new campaign. And he does like this really nice pitch about like just wanting to be friends with the mayor because all he wants is friends. That's all he really wants. And the mayor's iffy on it. And then he just decides to go with the other pitch, which is just to look like a superhero. And he flips out and he starts ripping into the mayor. And it's cracking me up. He just gets fired. He just gets fired. He's a fucking idiot. And this is where the movie really kicks up for me is at the welcome back party. What's his name? His frequent collaborator. I'm gonna kill myself for not knowing his name. He is there and he like opens up the garage and he sees that Tim Robinson is playing the drums and he starts to talk to him a little bit and they have like a normal conversation. It feels like everything has led to this moment where all of a sudden, maybe just maybe, he will make a new friend, and it's Connor O'Malley, his frequent collaborator, and very funny comedian Connor O'Malley. Uh, it seems like he's gonna make a new friend, and then all of a sudden he just starts ripping into him for leaving his wife in the sewer. He starts like fucking yelling at him, and then Tim Robbins starts fucking yelling at him back. And their dynamic's so good. And then Kate Mara's ex, who's the character's name I can't remember. I can't remember any of the characters' names. I don't give a shit about the character names. Kate Mara's ex gives a speech and is like talking about how glad they are to have her back and that she's safe. It's like a very heartwarming speech. And Tim Robinson stands up on a chair after he's done and is like clinks his glass and gives the most like awkward fucking speech of all time. It's very, very weird. And she tries to talk and he insists that she stands up on the chair and he puts her on the chair. And then he just like leaves because everybody fucking hates him. And this is like where the movie turns on everybody's turning on Tim Robinson because he sucks. And my actual favorite line in the movie is when Tim Robinson's standing outside from that party and he's depressed and the music is very sad and then it cuts back inside to his view, like the view from inside looking at him and he's sad. And uh Connor O'Malley, who we saw stand up on the chair beforehand, you can hear him continuing his speech, and it's supposed to be a sad moment because Tim Robinson is being left behind, and Connor O'Malley is talking about how the United States military has left Afghanistan. He doesn't understand why. He's getting very like political. It's just so like the juxtaposition is so good. It's cracking me up. Anyway, uh, I skipped the part where he breaks into Paul Rudd's house. That is also a very good bit where he gets in there and he's just like looking at things and pretending things are cool. And he finds his gun and he's just waving his gun around. And then he gets a phone call and he starts taking the phone call and talking. And then he runs out of the house because Paul Rudd's wife is there and he doesn't want to get caught. And then as he's running out, he realizes he still has the gun in his hand. He goes, fuck. And he just takes the gun with him. He's just fucking stupid. He's like the antithesis of like a well-rounded character who he just does stupid shit nonstop. And he's just such a bizarre character in this Craig. His name is Craig Waterman. He's a fucking bizarre character in this very real movie. He just sticks out so bizarrely. It's wonderful. But he's now at this point, picking back up where I left off, he's now like at the outskirts of his life. He's like falling apart. He's doing crazy shit all the time. He goes back to where the guy who sold him a phone and he asks him to give him drugs. And so the guy's pitching him drugs and he ends up settling on taking a lick of this frog skin. It's essentially DMT that is going to like make him trip. And of course, I know a lot about psychedelics and things. I've done a lot of like reading of books by Michael Pollan and some other authors. And I know the DMT is, or this sort of DMT adjacent drug is supposed to be a very, very potent psychedelic that you're supposed to trip on for like 10, 20 minutes. But people have reportedly experienced like feeling like they are somewhere else for months on end. Like this crazy new place. That's what it feels like. And so we're going into that knowing that he's like gonna be gone for a long time. He starts to trip and it's like getting trippier, like the ceiling turns into a wall and he walks in and it's a subway. And And Paul Rudd is serving at the restaurant at the Subway, and he just walks up, and it's just a normal conversation between them. The bizarreness is gone. Just orders a Subway sandwich, gets it made, has like a positive interaction with a guy, finally like a positive, normal interaction with a male friend, potential friend, who like just is making him a sandwich, and then he wakes up, and Tim Robinson's delivery of like describing how he was in a Subway, he just ordered a sandwich, is so fucking funny. It's probably the funniest moment in the movie to me is him going to the Subway, and I guarantee you when we do our Oscar superlatives next year that this is going to be a nominee for biggest LOL moment, biggest laugh out loud moment, and it could very easily win. I can't see a lot of other things making me laugh as hard as that shit. A lot of moments in this movie are going to be there for sure. This is one of the funniest movies I've seen in a long time. And then my other favorite scene in the movie is when they're at the birthday dinner for the son, and he's like turning over a new leaf. He's like trying to be a better guy. He's let it go of like the Paul Rudd stuff. He's trying to be normal again, even though Kate Mara has left him and everybody hates him. He's trying to like turn over a new leaf. And they're at the dinner, and these tough guys bump into Kate Mara, and he goes, "You know what?" He's fed up, and he stands up and he goes, "Hey, you need to apologize to the lady for bumping her chair." And he stands up, and he gets it done, and he intimidates them enough to where he apologizes. The tough guys apologize, and then Tim Robinson sits down and he goes, "We gotta fucking get out of here. Why the fuck did I do that? We need to get the fuck out of here right now." Oh my god, his commitment to like the absurdity of the bit is so good. He just needs to get the fuck out of there right fucking now. And the movie ends with what we think is going to be a nice moment. Is he passes by the Corvette that he wanted to ride in. He was going to be the first one to ride in it, according to Paul Rudd. He passes by it and he drives on and he goes, "It's okay. It's whatever." And then he comes back and he revs the tires and he rams the Corvette and just destroys it. And then he runs inside and he starts waving the gun around at all the guys hanging out. And he's just pissed and he's yelling. And it's just such funny jokes. It's so funny. The guy has like the new guy that replaces him has like a stupid fucking name or something. I can't remember. And he accidentally fires the gun and they all hit the ground. And then Paul Rudd's toupee comes off. And he promised Paul Rudd that he wouldn't let anybody know that he's bald. And so he pretends to like he yells all of them to get on the ground like he's gonna shoot them, and he like signals the power like put your toupee back on, put your toupee back on. Like he's still doing solids for a guy he thinks is his friend, you know, even though he's like at like his wit's end. He's still like, I promised this guy I would do this. Let me do this, you know. This is what friends are for, kind of shit. And he gets arrested. He's in the cop car, and we have this weird flashback to the awkward night from like so long ago where he eats the soap, and it's like it shows what should have happened. Where he's like, "Hey guys, sorry about like the thing," you know, and they're all like, "Oh, it's not a big deal." And he's like apologizing for like, you know, just telling him he had a good time, like just being like a normal guy. He's like fantasizing about being a normal guy with normal guy friends. And then it cuts back, and obviously the reality is that he's a lunatic, and that he has a distorted reality of what friendship is really like and what you owe one another. And but he still, you know, he still did Poirot a favor. He protected his secret. So Poirot looks back and he winks at him. It's great. It's this great little moment of like, thanks, man. Like, but is it real though? Is it real, or is it just Tim Robinson? Is it just Craig Waterman who's crazy? You know, and you don't really know. But the final shot is Tim Robinson just lights up with this big smile because he's so happy he got a wink. And he's like, "Oh, we are friends. We're friends." And it just ends. I think this movie is fantastic. I think the only con I have about it is that it is the biggest pro is that it's committed to the bit, and the biggest con is that because it's committed to the bit, the middle portion of it gets a little exhausting, a little tiring when, you know, we are so committed to just watching Tim Robinson be ridiculous from scene to scene, and he's in every single fucking scene. So it's just constantly Tim Robinson being crazy and crazy and crazy. And it does get a little tiring, but it really does pick itself up in the latter third, you know, and keeps going. So how many DMT toads out of five do I rate this movie? I'm giving it 5 or 4. I'm giving it 4. I'm giving it 4 out of 5. I think it's very solid. I think it cracked me up in theaters. It is very entertaining to watch. I insist you bring your friends to this movie. It just didn't, you know, it's not something that's going to last with me outside of the laughs, which is what a good comedy is there for. It's there to just make you laugh. And like a great comedy, of course, is going to stick with you and you're going to keep it with you and maybe reference it. And I think there will be things that I would reference from this movie because Tim Robbins is a very referenceable kind of person. But I don't know anybody that's watched it yet, is the biggest problem. It has not reached the heights of referencing like I think You Should Leave has. And so, nobody I know has seen it. And so more people need to watch it. We need to post memes about it. And we need to start making some inside jokes and some references to this movie because this is ripe with references. Now, that's all the time we have. If you'd like to give your thoughts on the show, you can email us at theboxofficeshowpod@gmail.com. Our main title theme for the show is Sundown by Joseph McDade. And if you like the show, please give us 5 stars, whatever podcast app you're listening to, and be sure to tune in next week. Thank you for listening. Have a great rest of your day.